On this episode of What Could Go Wrong, I'll be covering a very sensitive topic, so please keep that in mind before tuning in or letting any children under the age of 18 listen in to this particular episode. I will be joined today with my guest, Tammie Tettaton, discussing something that could be triggering to a lot of people out there, so please keep that in mind. As some of you might already know or may not know, I lost my husband back in October of this past year to health complications. And ever since, I've kind of been in a spiral trying to navigate grief and loss as a mother to 5 children on my own now. Now, Tammie is also a mother, although much more experienced than myself. And she did not lose her husband, but instead she has lost 2 of her children. One she lost at the age of 2, and her other child that she lost was the same age as my husband, which was 34. And she lost him also in October of this past year due to suicide. This episode is going to focus on how we have both experienced those losses differently. Me from the perspective of a wife and a mother, and her perspective as a mother. And we will be trying to offer any kind of advice or insight on how we have coped with those losses, as well as shine any light for those who are also going through similar situations to ourselves. I would also like to add that since we are touching on a very sensitive topic and a very painful subject for a lot of people, that it really hits close to home with, that if you are ever feeling depressed or alone, to please reach out to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling 988 or simply by calling 911 for help. And the suicide hotline, it can be called or texted if anyone is not comfortable with talking on the phone, because I know a lot of people, such as myself, have had a lot of issues talking on the phone before whenever you're dealing with something that is bigger than yourself, or it feels like it is. So please never feel like you are really alone, no matter what you're going through in life. And always remember that God is with you, no matter how alone that you might feel at the time. And I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you, and stay tuned for What Could Go Wrong with Cassidy Steinbruner. So today I have with me Tammie, and some of this could be a sensitive topic for some people, but maybe some people could find it more supportive, or just it could help them feel like they're not alone going through grief and loss, because I think that's different for everyone, depending on who you lost and how well you knew them. But I mean, loss is loss, and it can greatly affect lives, it can ruin lives. And we're kind of here today to just discuss from 2 different perspectives, because I'm a wife and she was a mother who, we've both lost people. And we're kind of looking at it from 2 different perspectives, and hopefully someone can walk away with feeling like they're not alone in their own personal grief and loss. So thank you for joining me today, Tammie.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we know each other from church, and of course, you knew my husband, at least slightly, whenever we were first converting to Catholicism, but I never got to meet your son. So if you want, you can kind of tell us just a little bit about, your son, and kind of just talk about whatever you want to do with your son, like about your son.
Well, my son David was 34 years old. He was an amazing guy, funny, kind, would do anything for anybody, was my saving grace on many times, could fix anything. I can't tell you how many things he's fixed for me. He was super talented, artistic, just an amazing person. And he committed suicide. He,
Okay.
I really think it was an impulsive act, and he, he had his demons just like we all do.
Right.
One day, they just got the best of him. and he couldn't take it back.
Yeah. Did you have a pretty, I mean, I'm assuming that you had a pretty good relationship with your son, pretty close one,
Oh yeah, we were thick as thieves.
right?
Yeah, I mean, we talk uh, sometimes numerous times a day. There's been times, he's lived with us on and off for years, and anytime I needed anything, all I had to do was pick up the phone and call, and he was there. Even if he was out of state, he would make a way to get back here.
Mm,
Yeah, we were very close, and it's been devastating, honestly.
yeah.
You know, I still it's still hard for me to wrap my head around.
Hmm.
I wake up, I want to call him, and then I'm like, oh crap, I can't. you
Yeah.
know, it's just been terrible, really. I have to say that I have found so much support in so many unexpected places. My church family, my work family, my friends have all been just amazing. And his girlfriend has been amazing. And we talk regularly, and we've been able to help each other. And I think that's the key, really, when you're going through grief, is you've got to find that support, because it's not something that happens that you can get through in a week or a month or 6 months. It takes time, and you've got to have that support. And you have to, I mean, a big thing for me is I've had to learn to give myself a break, because it's been hard for me just to function and do the daily things sometimes. And it turns out that nobody's going to die if you don't dust, you
Yeah.
know? And,
Yeah.
and I've just, had to give myself a break like that. And if I just need to sit and look at pictures, or sit and read a book just to get my mind off of it, that's okay, you know? And nobody's sticking to my floor, so, that's good. And the dishes are done, so that's good enough.
Yeah. I can relate to that a lot because, I mean, I do have young children, but at the same time, I was kind of a neat freak. I wanted everything to be the way I wanted it.
Right,
And with Ryan being gone, it's like I just kind of sat back and I'm like, okay, I'll do the main stuff that I have to do, but I'm gonna stop pushing myself so hard because what good is it? It's not helping. And sometimes I guess maybe for some people it does help to go and do and push themselves to achieve. But for me, it's like I need to slow down and let myself feel the way I feel because otherwise I kind of like it builds up and then it hits me all at once and I can't handle it and I
right,
like have full-blown panic attacks.
right. Exactly. And that's the thing that's crazy about grief, is everybody handles it different. And I I do work a lot, and that helps, because I'm busy. I'm a nurse, and
Yeah.
so I'm busy, and I'm really not able to think about it during those times. But, just giving myself permission to feel has helped me.
Yeah.
And I mean, my husband has been amazing, and my oldest son has been amazing, and my daughter. And it's just a hard place.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep breathing in and out, and take it one day at a time. And sometimes that's too big of a chunk, so you take it 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, I understand that exactly because I some days are just I think actually Ryan's mom put it the best and it is like you no longer have good days. It's just like days where it's a little less hard, but
Right,
it's not like where you can't get out of bed. It's just hard. And then you have those really bad days where you can't get out of bed and you don't even understand what the purpose of life is. And you got to get out of your head whenever that happens because that can be very, very just crushing and depressing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the times that I just try to distract myself. I'm an avid reader, so sometimes just picking up a book and reading and getting involved in the storyline will help me to not think so much,
Right.
and or doing something else, going to the gym, or you just have to find those things that can, and sometimes it's just taking a nap.
Mhm.
And it just depends, on the day and how much you're able to do. And I think the big thing, if I have one take home message for people, it's just give yourself a break and feel what you feel, and just take it one day at a time,
Yeah.
because when you love big and you lose somebody, it
Mhm.
hurts.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's a piece of your heart that's gone, and nothing can
Mhm.
fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can get pretty negative at times, and it's Ryan's mom that I talk to the most because I think that we can relate very closely on like it's our grief is different, but it's like the most close in grief, I think, because like to lose a child, I can't even imagine, but yeah, like I can't imagine what it's like to lose a child at any age. Like it doesn't matter if they're grown or they're a kid. That just to me that just is I don't know how you ever pick yourself up again because losing Ryan was I think it is the hardest thing I've ever done and probably hopefully it is the hardest thing I will ever do. But you never know in in life, you never know.
Right.
uh, that's what I'm hoping for is like that is the biggest blow I ever take because it has been almost like mind-boggling how to ever pick myself up again. So yeah, I really I lean on his mom for support more than anyone, and but I have very supportive friends, which has helped. So I can relate to what you're saying. Like I stopped working whenever I lost Ryan because someone had to be home with the kids. But just having like a very good support system of friends and like the church has been great and Ryan's family especially. I mean, I will give credit, my own family has been there too, but they didn't know Ryan as well, obviously.
Right.
So I relate more to the loss with his family.
Right.
But yeah, I'm so grateful to have a very supportive, understanding mother-in-law because a lot of people don't have that, and
Right.
I'm very, very privileged, and I know that I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you lose people, I mean, unfortunately, David's not the first person I've lost. I lost my daughter when she was 3, but it was different, and that's been kind of mind boggling to me. I think that maybe prepared me a little bit for this, because after I lost her, I went and stayed with my mom and her boyfriend, and I unloaded watermelons that summer. Personally unloaded over 1 million pounds of watermelons, because they come in loose, and you have
Mhm.
to put 50 to a bin, so you have to count, and you can't think and count at the same time. And then at the end of the day, you're tired because you've unloaded so many watermelons,
Right.
and you could sleep. So, it's funny. You find ways to cope, and
Mhm.
it's been amazing to me with David. I've found support in the strangest places.
Mhm.
I'm a pretty vocal person, and I'm a pretty open person, and everybody that knows me knows what happened. And
Right.
I've I've had people that are not real close friends just offer amazing amounts of support,
Mhm.
and we've become closer. It's pretty amazing.
Mhm.
And you just have to take that support where you get it, because some people don't have supportive families. Some people don't
Mhm.
have a bunch of supportive friends, and you just have to be open to the support that you do find. And
Right.
I've been totally blessed with how much support I have received, and and especially from those unexpected places. And
Right.
that helps. I mean, you've got to find that, and being able to talk to people that understand and listen to podcasts and
Mhm.
hear what's helped other people. And there's just so much out there to help you. And I want everybody that's going through this to know they are not alone. There are people out there that understand where you're coming from, and they might not be what you expected. The support might not come from where you expect it to come.
Right.
It's just it's just kind of amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. When Ryan like Ryan had been sick for quite a long time, and I think a lot of people were aware of that, but it's one of those things where you never really expected anything bad to like happen that was permanent, like death.
Right.
You thought that, oh, it's another hospital stay, it's another medication, it's just another trip to the ER. That's kind of where my mind was. I didn't actually think about losing him. And even whenever his condition worsened in March of this past year, I was still kind of in some denial, I think, because even he was a little more skeptical about his survival. And I wouldn't like hear of it. I wouldn't let him talk about it. I was just so set on, you have to be here. Like, it was almost like an attitude like, how dare you even think of dying, even though he couldn't help it.
Right.
And, and that that really hurt. The shock, really, I think was just the shock went on for quite some time for me
Mhm.
because when you take care of someone that was started out just ill, like very sick, and then they became like almost terminally ill, and I didn't even really know that he was terminally ill. And then for it to like just happen right in front of me, I was in so much shock that I want to say it took a good month for me to even feel like I woke up from a dream.
Right.
And whenever you wake up from that dream, you don't want to be awake.
Right.
And so I think God gives you a lot of grace in the first days or week or maybe even month that you lose someone because it is very hard. It's indescribable. But at least for me, like I feel like God just gave me so much grace because I was able to function enough to care for my kids and to plan a funeral and do all of those things that like they were responsibilities.
Right.
And at the same time I was like losing my mind, but I was still fully functional and like, I had so many people offering support, just showing up randomly to my house. They weren't even calling, they were just showing up here to help. And that was to me the biggest blessing because people I hadn't even seen in a long time that I didn't even know, like, that they knew that Ryan had died, or I didn't even think that they even cared. They showed up and they're just like here to support me and to help with the kids. And I'm just like still in this shock. Like, I'm not really understanding why they're here, but I'm letting them help me because I know something's wrong.
Right.
And it's grief is like really hard to even describe unless you go through it because I mean, I've met people who lost spouses and even my own cousin, she lost her husband a few years ago, same age and everything. And I never even like comprehended that that would happen to me. I
Right.
remember feeling super sorry for her and just thinking like how does someone lose their husband at 34? But I think he had had a massive heart attack I think that's what it was, and so it was more unexpected for her and her family.
Hmm.
For me for me, I think I should have come to terms sooner, but I was, you know, I'm not that kind of person. I need to know that there is hope or I can't go on.
Right. Right. And you have to give yourself a break. You come to terms when you come to terms. And I know in the first month after David passed away, I was on autopilot and
Mhm.
it wasn't even real. And I mean, still, it's been 2.5 months and still it's not always real. But it's, it just, it doesn't have to be real. It is what it is. It doesn't have to be real. You feel what you feel and it just, you just keep going. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Has there been anything specifically that people have told you, like, that really did help you? Or did you just come to the idea that taking it one day at a time was what you needed to do since you've been through this before?
I think I know that because I've been through it before and probably I mean I'm a very affectionate person and people just come and give me random hugs and that helps. It's that human connection and it's not anything that people said cuz I mean really there's nothing that anybody can say that makes it better, but it's
Right,
just that they just realizing that people care about you and hurt for you and with you because I know a lot of people find it so awkward and they don't know what to say when somebody they know or love loses somebody and
right.
and it's not about what you say, it's about showing up. And for me that's the thing that has helped me the most is I've had so many people just show up and it doesn't matter what they say because I can see the intent. And I mean, there's all the cliches. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. You have my condolences. Oh, he's in a better place and
Yeah.
these things. And it doesn't really matter what people say. It
Mhm.
just the fact that somebody acknowledges your grief,
Right.
that this is the hardest thing. This is a hard thing. And I think really grief is one of the hardest things that we have to go through in life
Yeah.
because fortunately we're all going to die and we're all going to lose people and it is a universal condition and my faith in God has helped me so much. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
my priest told me this helped me so much that it's okay to yell at God. He understands. It's okay to be angry that he saw fit to let this happen.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay and God understands that. And it's okay for me to yell at David that he did this
Yeah.
and to be angry with him because he cut his own life short and he left his children,
Right.
he left me, he left his girlfriend, he left his family, he left all of his friends. And it's okay to be angry. I mean, and that's part of grief. And I mean, for me, that's been very freeing just to be able to do that and
Right.
realize that that's just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that because whenever Ryan had burst literally like died within moments, our priest showed up and he was late. He was supposed to be there sooner and he got I guess confused about what room we were in the ER. And when he showed up, he was in shock and he I mean, I guess he was in a similar amount of shock as me, just like, how could this actually happen? Like, he was just alive the other day when I came and saw him at your home. And it was actually my priest was the only one with me at that time, but not in the actual moments when he passed away, just
Right.
right afterwards. And he did all of his prayers and everything that you're supposed to do and he made sure that I got home okay, and he knew that I was in a state of shock, and he made sure to check in with me quite a lot, and he made sure that the church helped me. Like, I went and took care of funeral arrangements, but he made sure everything went smoothly and I didn't have to do too much because he had been aware of Ryan being sick for a while.
Right.
So the church was already very supportive, and especially just our priest was just amazing. And we recently got a new priest, which I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And he's a very nice man. I like him, but I really held on to our other priest because I had that moment with him that I didn't have with anyone else.
Right.
And I just when I found out that we were getting a different priest, I kind of had a little meltdown in church, and I was crying and everyone's just like kind of looking at me, and I'm just like, "Oh, please stop looking at me, like I'm a mess. My life is a mess." When he gave me a hug before he left, and he told me, his thing from the beginning of Ryan actually passing away was he would give me a hug and he'd pat me on the back and he'd say, "Stop crying. He's okay." And I would just be like, "That's a weird coping mechanism for grief, but okay." Just
Right.
just like slap you on the back and tell you everything's gonna be all right. But, I guess different cultures deal with grief differently. And I know that he's lost people as well. So he does know somewhat of how, what grief feels like.
Right.
So he's not just going at it from a heartless point of view. He is wanting you to know that you can pick yourself up and keep going, even if you don't want to.
Right. Right. Well, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah, he is. I really miss him, and I hope that one day he maybe can come back and be our priest again.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we lost him as our local priest, I had a good week of just like I felt like I was going through a different kind of loss. Like
Right.
nobody had died, but it was the last priest that I knew Ryan personally.
Mm.
And when you lose that, like it just kind of felt, just like, oh man, no one can replace him because he didn't know my husband. But do you think that, because I know that you just said that losing your first child since she was younger, do you think that that was more devastating, or like was it completely comparable, like both losses?
Well, it was devastating in a different kind of way
Mhm.
because, like I said, she was 3.5, and I uh, I grieved for her future. I mean, I grieved for her too, but it was just different. And
Mm.
that's what was surprising to me, how different it is. But they were two different people.
Right.
Well, I've lost my dad, and I've lost all my grandparents, several uncles, and it it's different with each person because your relationship is different with those people. And I had a lot more time with David than I did with Elizabeth. And also, I'm older now and hopefully wiser. And I've been through more life experiences. And so I'm at a different place than I was 30 years ago when I lost Elizabeth. And I think I have better coping skills now just because I've been on the planet longer and I've worked
Yeah.
really hard to get those coping skills, because sometimes you learn those as a young person and sometimes you don't. And I didn't. And I've had to learn those coping skills, and I've thankfully have learned a lot over the years. I've done a lot of personal work like that just to learn to be a better person and to be more in touch with who I am. And I don't know, just as you get older, hopefully you do get wiser and you do learn. And I have. I feel like fortunate that way. I've been able to learn from everything that has happened to me in the past. I just it's just different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I understand. Well, understand from a different perspective, but I do understand. Do you feel like, and I don't know if everyone feels this way with grief or this is just a personal thing for me, but do you feel like you relive like the last moments with that person or the last phone call just like over and over again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I replay in my head all the time the last time I talked to David, and I knew when I was talking to him that morning that he was not doing great,
Mhm.
but I did not realize how not great he was doing,
Right.
or I would have stayed on the phone with him.
Mhm.
And because I had to work that night, I work nights, and um, I had to go to bed. And so we got off the phone, and I would have stayed up. And that's a very dangerous rabbit hole to go down because
Yes, yes.
you can't beat yourself up for what you could have done. I mean, and maybe I learned that with Elizabeth, and that took me years and lots of therapy because she died on a family outing at the river. She drowned. And if I would have known that was going to happen, I would have locked my kids in the house and we would have never gone anywhere. But you don't know. And just like that, I didn't know that David was in that kind of a bad place. I just thought
Right.
he was having a normal struggle. And I did my best to be supportive, but you cannot beat yourself up for what you could have done because we all do the best that we can with what we know.
Right.
And I mean that's a dangerous rabbit hole and I've been down it many times and I have to in my head I know that I couldn't have done anything to prevent it. That was his choice and it was a very impulsive thing that he did. I know that because he could be an impulsive person. In my head I know it, but in my heart it's hard for my heart to know that. And that's going to take me a lot more time.
Right. Yeah, I understand that because I don't think I could have done a lot to change the outcome of what happened with Ryan because he was so sick.
Right.
But at the same time, those final days, like I relive those days a lot. And I'm just like, man, I knew something was wrong and I wanted him to go to the hospital sooner because I knew something was wrong. I knew
Uh-huh.
that he was acting a little different and weaker and he kind of stopped wanting to eat and I kind of knew that this is where you step in and you do something. And I did call or pick up the phone to call 911 about 2 or 3 times and he did not want me to. He's just like, "No, I'm really just tired." And he just wanted to sleep, and he wasn't sleeping. So I would make deals with him and I would say, "Okay, well, if you drink some chicken broth, then you just lay down and take a short nap and then we'll call the hospital." And I was never thinking, "Oh, this is it. This is his final moments, his final days."
Right.
I was just thinking he was weak, he was sick, and he just rest would do him good and he would get to the doctor, you know, soon. That was my thought. And
Right.
I told the doctor that in the ER, I said, "Is this my fault?" Because as his blood pressure was dropping just so fast. And I was just like, "Is this my fault?" And the doctor's just like, "No, it's not your fault. This was, a long time coming, and there's not a lot that you could have done even days ago. And he wanted to be at home with you, so you did what he wanted." And he wanted to go home from the ER, uh, even whenever we knew he was not going to make it. And they were going to let him because they said, no need in him being here. Let him have his moments at home. But I couldn't take him home because he could not walk at that point.
Right.
So they were going to sort out a Medicaid ride and stuff to help transport him home. And I had already talked to hospice. He had talked to hospice very briefly, and he just kept seeming like he was getting more tired. And that, I guess, should have been my wake up moment where it's like, hey, he's getting really tired. He's not really answering questions. His blood pressure's dropping. It took a few different nurses to come in and explain to me what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I just going to be honest here. He did not have the nicest nurses. So when I was kind of in shock at losing him, but not actually understanding I was losing him, the nurses were kind of looking at me like, didn't you know this was going to happen? Because he was sick. And I'm just like, no, like I never thought it would happen. But they kept kind of treating it like, surely you prepared yourself for this, on some level. But I hadn't. And I don't even, I think what bothers me is not knowing the last thing that he heard me say, because I don't actually know when he went unconscious, because he stayed alive for quite a bit of time after he went unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So I worry, like, what was the last thing that he heard me say? And was it something good? Was it something stupid? Did he know that he was dying? Like, all those things go through my head, and they just, man, just the guilt and the regret and the worry just like washes over you, and you really can't go down that rabbit hole like you were saying, because it destroys you as a person. It really does.
Yeah.
Because when you love someone that much and you've seen them suffer and you just want them to be okay, you want to protect them and you can't.
Right.
Like that was my point of view. I had looked after him. I was basically his caregiver for over a year, and like I had looked after him every day.
Right.
He had been sick for longer than that, but it was the last year that was the hardest.
Right.
I had looked after him, and I was still in that mode of look out for him, protect him, speak for him because he can't.
Right.
And I felt like no one was listening to me, and I'm just watching like blood pressure drop and no one was listening to me. I'm just like, somebody please help, and nobody could, or it was just devastating, and the amount of panic that you feel in that moment is indescribable. And even after they turned the machines off, I was still sitting there just like no, like please do something. And they couldn't, and the doctor had to come tell me they could not. And if we, they were saying like if they tried, they were going to hurt him and he probably wouldn't live even if they had resuscitated him. And they're being logical, I'm not being logical.
Right.
And I think that's just normal
It.
because it's your family member, it's your loved one.
Right. Well, sometimes, I mean, when somebody goes through a long illness, and even if you do prepare yourself and you know that it could happen, you're never ever prepared.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I've seen that in my own life. I've seen that as a nurse taking care of other people in their last moments. You cannot be prepared for that.
Mhm.
Even if you know it could happen, even if you know what to look for and you know what's happening, when it happens, you're still not ready for that. So I want you
Yeah.
to give a break, and I want you to know that you gave Ryan a good last year. You took care of him. Till death do you part. You did your part. You have a lot to be thankful for, because without you, he wouldn't have done so well as he did for that last year. So I don't want you to have regrets about that. And I also want you to know that the hearing is the last thing to go. Even when people can't respond, they can still hear. So whatever you told him, however many times you told him you loved him, he heard you.
Yeah, I guess kind of a weird response because the nurses told me, when they turned off the machines to say whatever I wanted to him and it was okay. And And even before they turned him off early actually because I was panicking so much that they said that it was making it worse on me.
Mhm.
And so they went ahead and they silenced and I I don't know what came over me, but it's like I felt responsible in some weird way, and I was just telling him, like, how sorry I was. I'm just like, "I'm so sorry." And I was basically apologizing, and I didn't really even know what for. I was just sorry. Sorry for anything I ever said or did wrong because, like, I don't know. I had a moment where it didn't make sense, but I just needed to say it.
Yeah, and that's good, and I'm glad you had that because when people have been sick for so long, I mean, it's been my experience that people know when they're getting ready to pass away.
Mhm.
They know when they're getting ready to die, and Ryan probably knew, and and that's probably why he wanted to stay at home as long as he did because he wanted those last moments at home with
Right.
you. And if I know nothing else about Ryan, I know how much he loved you and the kids. And
Yeah.
I know that it was hard for him to leave you,
Yeah.
but I don't want you to have regrets because you did so much. You did everything that you should have done, you know. But sometimes we can't save the people that we love. Just like I couldn't save David or Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And I couldn't save my dad either. But I was able to bring my dad home and give him the death he wanted.
Mhm.
He died with his family around him. And I mean, after a long illness, well, actually, he had bladder cancer and was doing really well. And then all of a sudden got sick. And I took him to the hospital, and his kidneys failed, and his blood pressure wouldn't stay up. And I could have transferred him down to the ICU, and we could have done all of the things, but he didn't want that. And so we didn't do that. We went home. And I'm glad because I gave him a good death, a death that he wanted. And that helped me so much after he passed away. When we do everything, people don't realize what do everything means because people want to keep their loved one alive at all costs. But cardiopulmonary resuscitation is traumatic. I mean, if it's done properly, ribs get broken, tubes get put in all different places, and it's a traumatic experience. And sometimes, usually, or a lot of times, not usually, but a lot of times, people don't survive even after resuscitation. We just
Yeah.
make the last moments miserable.
Yeah.
So it's okay to not do everything. And you gave Ryan a good death. You were there with him. You didn't make them break his ribs. So you shouldn't have any regrets. And I'm glad you got to tell him that you were sorry for everything. And and I know that he heard you.
Yeah. I hope that he did. I don't know if it would have, made a difference. I don't know, but I just wanted him to know like how sorry I was for anything and for everything and yeah, I mean, to be honest, if the doctors had let me, I would have I was going through a moment of what felt like insanity and
Right.
I was just like do whatever that you need to do to keep him alive and they're just like no, you would be a cruel person to do that to him and he's not even going to live if you do that or if we do that and you're just causing him pain.
Right.
So when they said that to me, it's like I understood, but it's like I still wanted them to do it.
Right.
But like I didn't ask them to do it. It's like I just wanted it, but I never mentioned it again because I just knew that that was wrong.
Right.
But yeah, I can't live in my head with regret and stuff because it's always going to be there no matter who you have lost. You could have lost a pet and you're going to look back and be like, man, why didn't I buy them the better pet food? You're gonna look back, you're gonna have regret about the weirdest things that you would never even think, I think, because I know
Absolutely.
I do. I do for sure.
But you can't beat yourself up. You because everybody does the best they can with the information that they have.
Mhm.
And there's always regrets in life. I mean, I certainly have many, but I know that I've always done the best I could with what I knew. I didn't always have all the information. And hindsight's always 2020. You can always look back and say, "Oh, I could have done this different. I could have done this better." But
Yes.
you can't do that to yourself because that guilt, that's not from God. It's not. Because if you know that you did the best you could, that's good enough.
Mhm.
Guilt doesn't do anything for you. It's not healthy. It's not good, and you can't you can't go down that road because that just makes you feel responsible for things that were not your responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm trying to think of anything that we didn't touch on in this, podcast yet. I know that you had said that if someone had lost someone, and it doesn't matter who they lost, just if you lost someone and they meant something to you, and you just gotta give yourself time to process and get over, not even get over, just work your way through the grief, because there's no such thing as getting over grief. I think you just work
Right.
your way through it. Do you have any other advice? Like, do you think that everyone is different, and so, like, do you think that therapy works for everyone, or is something that someone should seek out if they've lost someone for sure?
Oh, absolutely. But you have to find a good therapist.
Mhm.
They're trained to help you learn to get through it
Right.
because that's not something that people just automatically know. You're not born knowing how to go through grief. And sometimes you might be raised learning how to go through grief.
Mhm.
You've, had to go through it at a young age. You learned young, but I mean, it's been a huge help to me, and I am seeing my therapist again just to help me work through this grief. But it has to be somebody you're comfortable talking to. And and therapy is a safe place to let it all out.
Yeah.
Sometimes people aren't prepared for all of the raw emotion that comes with grief. And it's a safe place to share that raw emotion and get feedback on how to deal with it. I mean, it has helped me. I would recommend it, but that's just me. There's a stigma about therapy and mental health, but I think it takes a much stronger person to say, "Hey, I need some help." And just because you need some help processing grief, that doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that something bigger than you can handle has happened to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you'll be in therapy forever. It doesn't mean that you'll be locked in a rubber room. It doesn't mean that you need electroshock therapy. It just means it's something bigger than you can handle. And
Right.
it's definitely a good thing, for a lot of people. And maybe it's just 2 or 3 visits. Maybe it's a year's worth of visits because grief is different for everybody and everybody processes things differently. But for me, it's been it is that safe place and my therapist has helped me to put things in perspective and given me permission to feel how I feel. And for me, that's been invaluable.
Yeah. So I haven't gone to any type of therapy like regularly, but it was actually the day after Ryan died. I woke up that morning and I kind of had that moment where you're just like, "Oh man, that was real. That really happened." And I'd already had a really rough night. I hadn't slept more than probably 2 hours, maybe less than that. And I got up, I got my kids breakfast, and then I went by myself to the crisis center in town. And I just like checked myself in, and I went in, I talked to a therapist. And for some reason, I kept telling the counselor, therapist, that I should be dealing with this better. Like, I kept saying that to him. And he was just like, "Well, when did you lose your husband?" And I was like, "Yesterday." And he's just like, "Um, you're dealing with it the best way that you can right now. Why are you so hard on yourself?" And I'm just like, "Well, because everyone kept acting like in the ER yesterday that I should be prepared, and I wasn't." And I guess that kind of made me like their reaction kind of made me feel like my reaction was wrong. And then I had to go to the crisis center to talk it through with the therapist. And I was there for probably about two hours. Just like I had about 2 hours of just insanity where I was just like, why is this so difficult? I knew how sick he was, and just on and on and on. And that guy, he listened to me and he told me I was not wrong for feeling the way I felt, and I needed to give myself more of a break, kind of like what you were saying.
Right.
Because I don't even know what was going through my head, but I, I just, when you lose someone that important, that close, I do think that you lose your mind a little bit.
Sure.
I definitely can see that. So it's not just like grief is not just pain. Grief is like a form of losing your mind briefly until you like resurface out of whatever water that you're in that you need to try to breathe your way through, even though you feel like you can't. But do you have any other closing statements or anything that you'd want people to know that have lost a child or just anyone?
Well, I just want people that have lost somebody they love to know they're not alone. That everybody at some point in time loses somebody they love. And we've got to be there for each other. And if you know somebody that lost somebody they love, just show up. You don't
Yeah.
have to do anything profound. That's not what it's about. Just knowing that you care helps a lot.
Mhm.
And when you're going through that grief, just give yourself a break and realize that you don't have to be Superwoman or Superman. You just have to go through. I mean, I was so fortunate. I had some time off of work right after David passed away that I had already scheduled. So I didn't have to go back to work and try to be a normal person right away. My husband and I went away for a few days just to an Airbnb, and we didn't do anything profound. We watched movies and I cried and we talked, and just giving yourself that time to be in pain, because when you do lose somebody you love, when you love big and you lose somebody, it hurts big, and you just have to realize that's normal, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. It just,
Yeah.
that kind of loss is devastating, and you have to be kind to yourself. Give yourself that grace, because eventually you can talk about it without crying or screaming, and you can talk about it and make sense,
Mhm.
because I mean, I haven't made sense. I mean, my poor husband has watched me and been there for me while I've not made any sense at all, and that's okay. Just give yourself that grace.
Yeah. I can completely relate to that because my friends have been there for me, and my friends were also Ryan's friends, so they knew him very well, just like I knew him very well. So there's not like a ton of people I can talk to that knew him like on a certain level,
Mm.
and I am very, very grateful that I have them because they have listened to me ramble on, and I don't make sense half of the time, and I'll have my dramatic days, and I'll have my days where all of a sudden I am somewhat myself, even if I'm not fully myself.
Right.
And they're there for all of it. And they have never once told me, hey, you're dealing with this the wrong way.
Right.
They have been just supportive and just listened to me or offered advice if they had any. And if I didn't have them and I didn't have good supportive family members and a good supportive church, I really don't know where I would be because I mean, that has held me together so much, along with my kids. Just being here for my kids has been difficult because they went through losing their dad, and that is a pain I haven't even felt yet
Hmm.
because I still have my dad, so I can't relate to them on that level of pain. Plus, their ages are between the ages of 6 and 14, so I obviously could never relate to them on that level because they are still children.
Right.
But I feel for my kids as much as from a mother's point of view, I feel for my kids
Sure.
because that's their dad, and I can't imagine, like, still being a child that lives at home and losing your dad.
Right.
I can't imagine it. So I'm trying to be there for my children as much as possible, but then I'm always caught up in my own head. And it's just difficult place to be, and, you work through it at your own time and your own level, and however long it takes because that's what actually a friend of mine told me. Don't try to rush it. If it takes months, years, or your entire life, it is perfectly fine.
It is. It is. And I mean, that's definitely a take home message. And I know that you're being there for your kids and you're going to help them to learn how to cope with it because I know that you're that kind of mom. You're a great mom.
Thank you.
I mean, I have one of your kids in PSR. You've got great kids. And I know I've seen you guys interact and it just takes time and
Yeah.
we all have to go through it at our own pace. And that is exactly right, whether it takes months or years or the rest of your life. Because when you lose somebody big like that, you're never quite the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always a piece of your heart missing. I mean, it's been 30 years my daughter passed away. No, 29 years. I'm sorry. And I still have a piece of my heart missing.
Yeah.
It's just different, and you have to learn that new normal. And whatever that looks like is okay. I mean, what you feel is okay. What you think is okay. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be grateful that they're not suffering anymore.
Yeah.
And I know Ryan suffered a lot in the last year,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful that he's no longer suffering. That
Mhm.
he's, you know, gone to be with Jesus and is no longer having to suffer like he did.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also sad for you because that means he's gone.
Yeah. And I'm sad for you as well. I can't imagine the pain that you've went through. I mean, twice. I know that it's different because, like you said, you had less time with your daughter, but it's still your child and they're still gone. And I just can't imagine. And my heart goes out to you and your family entirely because when I found out that you had lost your son, who was the same age as Ryan, like that was kind of shocking to me. I don't know why the age shocked me, but it did because that was the same age as Ryan. And it just whenever I found that out, I felt like it's hard to describe. I felt like I could relate to you a little more, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, honestly, you and I were not really close. But then sometimes you just meet people randomly in Walmart and share that moment and realize you have a connection.
Yeah.
And now look at us. We're doing a podcast together because we have that in common.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I knew you guys on the surface level, but I feel like I know you a lot better now than I did. And, and it's been cool because now I can pray for you a little bit more specifically.
Yeah, and the same for you because I knew you from whenever we were converting to Catholicism because that's where we technically met was at church.
Right.
So like I knew you and I had known because I think it had gotten mentioned before that you had lost your daughter when she was very little. And Ryan and I both, we were just like we couldn't even process what that must have felt like. But we always felt for you as a mother since we were both parents. And then running into you randomly at Walmart and then finding out about your son and his age and everything that just took me to a different level that is indescribable.
Right.
I'm very grateful that you agreed to be on this podcast and that you agreed to talk to me about your own personal grief and loss and struggle. And I really do appreciate it. It's been a very, very big privilege, and I'm very grateful. And I am sorry that you had to lose your son as well as your daughter. I really am. There's no words.
No, but Cassidy, that's what I'm talking about. When I was talking about finding support in unexpected places, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that I can be a support for you. And I appreciate that you're being a support for me because I would have never guessed that, you
yeah,
know, that we would be a support for each other in a time that, because, Ryan and David passed away pretty close to each other. And so we're going through
yeah.
it at the same time. And, when my daughter passed away, I went to a grief group and that really helped because it was called Good Grief. I can't remember what it was called, but it was for parents that had lost a child. And
Mhm.
it helped me. All of these random strangers had gone through the exact or through the same thing as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, the circumstances might have been different, but they had gone through the same thing.
Mhm.
When you lose somebody, the circumstances may be different, but it's still loss.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I really do I really do understand what you're saying. And I've been looking into considering going to some form of counseling or something. I've really leaned a lot on my priest or not really guidance, but just help during this time because, you do get in that mind frame where you're just like, why did this happen? How could this have happened? And is this really what God intended? And so
Right.
I really have leaned on my priest to help guide me along through that process of grief, my personal grief.
Yeah.
But I am considering some form of counseling of some kind just because I do tend to get inside my own head and I need to be here for my kids and I can't let myself fall down that rabbit hole.
Right. Well, you don't have to go to a counselor, a priest, or a pastor. I mean, they're also trained to help people
Yeah.
go through it. And for some people, that may be the better option.
Mhm.
But it's just being open to finding what works for you.
Yeah.
That's what you've got to do. For me, it's my priest and my counselor and my family and my friends.
Yeah.
And I journal and that helps. I mean, something that I learned to do when Elizabeth died, I would write her letters,
Mhm.
and that helped. And and this is going to sound hokey, but one of the things that helped me in the very beginning when she passed away, I had a wonderful dear friend named Judy Newman, and we got helium balloons and we went to the cemetery and we wrote a message to Elizabeth. I did this with my boys because they were young when she passed away, and we
Mhm.
all wrote her a message on our helium balloon and then we let it go.
Mhm.
That that helped.
Yeah.
It was a small thing, but it had profound meaning. And sometimes it's those small things that do have profound meaning. And it's just being open to the help that you have available to you.
Yeah. I've only taken my kids to the cemetery once since it happened because we still haven't really got everything established there. But that was, I guess, a very weird time because I never thought I would be doing that in my whole life. But I started talking to them about how we were going to start, especially whenever the weather is better, we're going to start coming here for holidays and stuff and
Yeah,
decorating his headstone and everything. And
right,
and I'm trying to find a way, like a healthy coping mechanism for my children as well, because I mean, I know it's hard for them and I want them to be included and, you know, the little things that people wouldn't think matter, but they do, like decorating his headstone for holidays and stuff, and
right,
finding ways of celebrating him on his birthday and Father's Day. And like I've never thought I would have to be creative with this kind of stuff, and but now that I am here, I am trying to find healthy healthy ways for my kids to cope that are, beneficial to them and not just like, well, your dad is gone and that's that.
right,
I want them to know that he's not gone. He is just gone before us and we're still celebrating the life that he had here.
right. Right. And I think the most important thing when you're helping your children deal with grief is to keep those lines of communication open and let them feel what
Mhm.
they feel. And if they're angry, that's okay. If they're sad,
Yeah.
that's okay. If they don't know what they feel, that's okay too. When my daughter passed away, I had to help son, my sons who were 5 and 10 deal with this. And I can look back and realize I probably didn't do the best. I probably could have
Mhm.
done better, but I did the best I could. And anytime they wanted to talk about her, I was fine with that. Anytime they wanted to talk about anything, I mean, I've always had a really open relationship with my kids, and they can talk to me about anything. And that's so important. And maybe just on Father's Day, have them make cards for their dad and take them to the cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, or his birthday, or whatever. That's something that kids can find meaning in. I mean, I think that's probably why the balloon thing helped me and my kids. It was something
Yeah.
tangible we could do.
Yeah. Sometimes you feel like you need to do some like kind of action
Right.
when even if it's small.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
have to be big.
yeah.
It's those details, those little things that help you to cope, and that you have to embrace those. And it it does help, and
Yeah.
sometimes it helps more than you realize at the time.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, we're running a little bit short on time, but I just wanted to thank you again for agreeing to come on here and to talk to me about your own experiences because I know that sometimes it can help to talk and sometimes I know people deal with things differently. They don't want to talk about it. They want to kind of hide from it.
Yeah,
But um
that's
but
okay
I
too.
feel like yeah, that's okay. I mean, you feel however you want to feel that makes you okay. But I know for me personally, I go through days where it's like I can talk about it, but I don't want to at the same time.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I really just appreciate it so much for you being willing to come on here and to be so open and just really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I hope that the people that listen to this, I hope this helps them to deal with their own grief.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I hope that something that one of us or both of us has said helps someone in a similar position. Maybe just gives them something to do while they're going through their grief.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, because
but
sometimes you get tired of talking about it.
yes, exactly. But yeah, I do appreciate it and thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Cassidy. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.